Greetings in Jesus' name, and it seems like now the third evening I tend to already feel a little bit more comfortable here and home or homey, which can be a good thing, but it can probably also be not such a good thing. But I've enjoyed our time here so far, and we look forward to continuing here. So this, with a very limited amount of evenings, it seems sometimes seems very difficult for me to pick. Okay, which topics do we need to talk about here? Which are still important, which are not that important. There is so many different directions we would like to discuss. And I would have liked to talk about family life. I would have liked to talk about church life. And I would have liked to talk about relationships. And I think probably I came up with one solution. Just mix them all up in one pot and try to do it all in one time. So my original draft on these notes was basically focusing on family life, but modifying them a little bit, and also wanting to talk about church life and also about relationships. I kind of found a blend in between all of them. So hopefully we can cover some material that is helpful for all of us. I'd like to begin with Psalm 92, verse 17, which says, "Let the beauty of the Lord, our God, be upon us." Now, this is a prayer that I think it's very fitting, very suitable, very fitting for a night like this, so that we can invite the Lord to be with us, and the importance of His presence among the people like us here. We not too long ago we passed through a town in Colorado, which was a small town in which a man by the name of Thomas Hansen had filed a lawsuit against his parents, of a lawsuit of $350,000. And his claim was, the reason for this lawsuit was malpractice of parenting. So he claimed that with the very, very bad job his parents had done on parenting, so they had done such a bad job, he claimed that he would need years of costly treatments and therapy by psychiatrists. So he needed the money to go to a psychiatrist for perhaps a few years. And I've also had people in our community, even an older gentleman came to me and said that he would be able to successfully charge his parents a whole bunch of money through a court lawsuit because they failed to teach him what he needed to learn in life. And I wouldn't want to argue with him. He could probably have done that, but I don't think overall it would have done him any good on the long run. So talking about when I said we are talking about family life, about church life, about relationships. So family life is all about relationships. Church life is all about relationships, and it is impossible to separate church life from family life. And a lot of the foundational factors that operate that make a healthy family are identical between a church life and also family life. So many of these principles apply in just about any situation, like in community life as well. So that's why we will kind of mix them up today, and maybe I'll confuse some of you a little bit, but hopefully we can find our way through tonight. Today's situation in the world, about thinking especially about families, statistics show that in North America about 36% of adolescent-aged children live in homes without one of their parents, which is a sad situation. It's not a very beautiful statistic. That is kind of the bad thing, the bad side about it. But I think the good thing is that, at least among our people in our community, I see there is a greater awareness, and also efforts are being made for parents to connect with children, like during evenings and so on, than it did like 40 years ago, I believe. I think so. I'm not very sure, but I believe it is. So the quality of family life and the structure very deeply influence the direction of young people, the direction young people go, related to in various directions, like mental problems and immoral activities and school dropouts and criminal activity and jail and all those things. They're very greatly influenced by the health of family life, by the core families, how we operate. And so I'd like to tell you a story that kind of illustrates what I'm trying to say today in regards to family life, church life, and relationships, all of these three areas. So there was this rat that looked out of through a crack in the wall to see a farmer and his wife opening a package. They just returned from a shopping trip during the day, and those nights were always special to this Miss Rat. Because normally they would snack on something and they would drop crumbs on the floor, and he had a good night's feast. So he was really curious and really excited, the farmer and his wife opening the package. But he was horrified when he saw that they were actually taking out a rat trap out of the package. So what's now? So he discovered it was actually a rat trap. So he ran back to the barn where the animals were in shock, and he called out with a loud warning to all the animals, and he says, "There's a rat trap in the house. There's a rat trap in the house." And so the chicken clucked and scratched away and raised her head a little bit and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Rat, I can tell you this is a grave concern to you, but it has nothing to do with me. It is of no consequence or no concern to me. I cannot be bothered by little things like that." So Mr. Rat anxiously turned to the pig and told him, "Hey, there's a rat trap in the house. There's a rat trap in the house." "Oh, I'm so very sorry, Miss Rat," said the pig. He sympathized with the rat, "but that has nothing to do with me. All I can do is pray for your safety. That's all I can do." And then the rat turned to the cow, and she called out, "There's a rat trap in the house." And the cow's reply was, the cow said this, like, "Wow, Mrs. Rat, a rat trap, eh? I'm in grave danger, ooh." Right? So are we really in that kind of a danger now? So the rat returned to the house, head down and dejected, and in desperate search of food at the house, and to face the farmer alone, and the farmer with his rat trap alone. The rat lived most of the time in the house because there was more food there, but at times in the barn. So between the barn and the house, right? So he had to go back to the house and face the farmer with his rat trap alone. And during the night, the farmer's wife heard a snapping sound in the house, just like that of a rat trap catching something, and catching a prey. So she rushed to see what was caught, but so it was completely dark. But she slowly reached out with her hand into that dark little corner. She couldn't see anything, and she was wondering what would be caught in the trap now. And suddenly a sharp snap and a sting in her hand. And so she felt, because it was dark, she was unaware that there was actually a poisonous snake with his tail caught in the trap. So the snake bit the farmer's wife. And I probably wouldn't have reached out slowly in complete darkness and to try to find out what was in the rat trap. But she did. So now the farmer rushed her to the hospital, and after a while, she returned back home, but she was very sick with a very bad fever. So now everyone knows that to heal, or everyone knows that to treat a fever of that kind, there's nothing better than a really fresh homemade chicken soup. So the farmer took his hatchet to the farmyard, and he got the main ingredient, what we would normally find in chicken soup, right? So it was a hen. He caught her and brought her in and converted her into chicken soup. So his wife lay in bed, and she continued. She didn't get well. So her sickness continued, her fever continued, and then up to the point where the neighbors and friends had to come over and sit around her bed and just help her out around the clock. She had neighbors and friends coming around her and helping her and supporting her. So to feed the friends and the neighbors, the farmer went again. He took his knife. He went to the barn, and he caught the main ingredient normally found in pork tacos. So Mr. Porky was gone too. And so he fed all the helpers, all the caretakers for his wife. But the farmer's wife did not get well. After a while, she died. And then so many people came to the funeral that the farmer again had to walk out to the barn and pick out the main ingredient that you would normally find in roast beef, which was the cow. Now, so this is probably pretty much the end of the story. But the lesson of the story here, I think you can catch that already. So everybody, the hen and the pig and the cow, said that a rat trap in the house is of no consequence to me. It has nothing to do with me. Absolutely no connection. There is nothing to worry about. But now, every time, what we're trying to learn from this little tale is that a rat trap can affect the whole farmyard. The whole farmyard was like kind of a family of animals. And in today's world, we would say that the devil goes around, he tries to set up traps too in church, in families, in communities. He's placing traps everywhere. And sometimes our attitudes are simply that, well, that's your problem. That's Mr. or Miss whatever, your problem. It has nothing to do with me. But remember, every time, so the next time you hear someone is facing a problem in church or in your family, I think that it should actually be of concern to you. So remember that when there is a rat trap in the house, that the whole farmyard is at risk. And it's the same way in families, in church life, in relationships, and everywhere. When there is a rat trap in the house, everyone is at risk. When the devil is trying to set a trap for one of your sisters or one of your brothers, that should actually be of concern to everyone. I don't mean that everyone should stick his nose into everybody else's business, but we cannot just simply ignore, like especially in church life or even in family, we cannot just simply ignore when somebody is suffering or when somebody is facing danger or somebody is walking a line that is very risky, like walking in gray areas of life. We should be concerned because if something happens to one brother or one sister, we can say that we are all at risk in one way or another. So remember that when there is a rat trap in the house, everyone is at risk. No one has the right to say that has nothing to do with me. Or like we tend to, as a father, I might say to my daughter or my son, well, that's your problem in school or at work or wherever you are. Just deal with it and grow up and deal with it, right? And we just want to push off a responsibility. Or I tend to tell my wife, hey, can't you just grow up and get over yourself or get over this problem, right? And that's normally the easiest thing to do, right? But remember, if there's a rat trap in the house, everyone is at risk, even yourself. Okay, what does the Bible say about family life or church life? In Proverbs 11, verse 29, it says, he who troubles his own house will inherit the wind. 1 Timothy 5, verse 8 says, but if anyone does not provide for his own, especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Galatians 6, verse 10 says, let us do good to all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. So there are specific responsibilities we have, and primarily the responsibility for a family lies on the shoulders of a father in his house, to lead the family, make sure the eternal well-being of the children, of the family, of his partner, the spouse, and we are commanded to do good, especially unto those who are of the household of faith. So it is everyone's responsibility to take care and actually have a heart of compassion for everyone else in the whole family, may it be a church family or another family, the way what we normally call our own family. So there are forces pulling you in two opposite directions, and because of this, it makes it no less important than ever to stand firm on your convictions and regarding the well-being and long-term care of your family, either church family or regular family. So why is this important? So we need to talk this about not primarily to avoid lawsuits of $350,000, but more importantly so that our families can live a fulfilling and a healthy life and be more prepared to be useful in the kingdom of God. So of all the institutions that God created, the family unit is perhaps the most essential, most basic one. It is the cell that produces the social life and everywhere. For the social soul, we could say. Where families are healthy and successful, society prospers at every level, and where families are falling apart and weak and torn, the foundation of every human institution tends to crumble and fall to pieces and shakes. So there is nothing that can replace the family unit as God has created it. Now, hurting and dysfunctional families are the devil's trophies, and he takes a lot of pride in showing those to the public. His success that he has had over time. The devil has had a lot of success in destroying families and getting families into situations where they're deeply hurt and basically become dysfunctional. And so they're his trophies, and he takes pride in them. So today, in this very congregation, and not just here, but everywhere, God delivers a standard of truth, not just for those who honestly search in doing the best they can, but also for the lukewarm. And God sends a message of forgiveness for those who have failed along these lines. And to a certain extent, we would say that every one of us has failed at times, especially as fathers and mothers. Maybe we find that we have failed our children at times. And also, God delivers a heart of compassion to those who have been hurt in this battle. So I'd like to mention 6 universal truths for healthy families, healthy church family, and healthy relationships that these basically all apply to all these 3 areas, family and church and relationships. So number one out of the 6 is we need to make sure that our priorities in life are correct. So Matthew 6:33 says, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you." And this teaches us that pleasing God and keeping him on number 1 on our priority list is absolutely a must. So all these things means basically all the necessary things needed for godly living. And so here Jesus clearly commands us to place him first in life, and everything else in life has to be number 2 or less. Pleasing God has to be number 1. It has to be the top priority in everything. Pleasing God and making sure the kingdom of God is of first importance in our life. So healthy families or healthy churches don't happen by accident. They actually happen because people or individuals have made very conscious choices to arrange their decisions so that they would line up with God's character, with God's will, and align our practices with whatever God desires of us. And good intentions are not enough. Only good intentions is not really a strategy that works for the long run. We have to just lip service or just saying that we are trying our best is not really enough. We must go out and say no to the demands that compete against God, and say yes to those activities that nurture Christian health or the healthy Christian life or Christ-likeness. So a truth concerning priorities would be Matthew 6:21 says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Wherever our treasure is, there our heart is also. Priorities demonstrate our value system as well as the value system of we pass on to our children. So the person who gives priority to God highly values God, and a person who gives priority to, what should we say, maybe just sticking his or her nose into all other people's business, highly values gossip and conflict. And that's just the way it works. So people who give priority to family, they care about providing for the needs and the well-being of his or her family. And so if we let time wasters crowd out high priority things in life, we know that we are in trouble, and we need to kind of refocus and recalibrate and see where we're really standing. So number 1 is we need to have our priorities properly arranged. Number 2 is in any circle, like a healthy family, a healthy church, healthy relationships, they're also based on, or they're built on grace and truth. So in John chapter 1 verse 14, Jesus is described as a person full of grace and truth. It says, "The glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." And in Proverbs 3 verse 3-4, it says, "Let not mercy and truth forsake you." It says mercy and truth, but mercy is very much in line with grace. So speaking the truth to your family, even if it hurts sometimes, It is very important, but at the same time, we always need to be gracious and extend grace, because that mightily demonstrate to our whole family and it influence our the long-term well-being of our family. So godly grace and truth are inseparable. We are not able to separate godly truth and godly grace, practicing these in life. So a powerful example of a balance between grace and truth is found in the Old Testament in the tabernacle. We have the example of the Ark of the Covenant in the tabernacle, and it was a piece of furniture. Well, we could say two pieces. It was the box and it was the cover. So the box, the Ark of the Covenant, it contained the truth of God. It contained the tablets with the 10 commandments, which represented God's perfect law. It also contained Aaron's rod, which represented God's perfect authority. And then it also contained the pot of manna, which demonstrated or illustrates God's perfect faithfulness to mankind. So that kind of demonstrates truth, God's truth. But then the cover of that same piece of furniture was it was called the mercy seat. And once a year, the blood of an unblemished lamb was being sprinkled onto that mercy seat for the forgiveness and the grace of sinners, right? For the forgiveness of sin through grace. So this piece of furniture, the box and the lid, they very strongly represented both grace and truth. And these have to operate in every environment, in the home and the church, if we want a healthy environment in our lives. So as leaders in our homes, we need to teach our children the importance of obedience to God, first of all, but then also to demonstrate grace when they fail. It has to be, both have to exist. We cannot separate both of them or them individually. There was a man named Joe White. He conducted a survey among many teenagers, and he asked them in a large group, it involved hundreds of teenagers in a camp. And he asked the question, what do you want most from your parents? And the results was, to my surprise, even number one response was that these young people, teenagers, they asked for truth or rules, or what do my parents actually expect of me? What truth should I follow? This was their number one desire, if they would know more. So to the question, what do you most want from your parents? So the number one result was, we would like to know the truth and what is expected of me. The second response was grace. They said, we want clearly defined parameters, but we also want them enforced within a context of acceptance and forgiveness. So by their own admission, teenagers asked for both grace and truth, which Jesus said, it was said of Jesus that he was a person filled with grace and truth. So someone has said a healthy family is a playground with a fence around it. So grace and truth has to be present. We cannot separate these. We need to work on the basis of truth, but we also need to be graceful to each other. Parents to children, sister to sister in church life, brother to brother, in every direction, in wherever relationships exist, we need to work on the principles of both grace and truth. Number 3 out of the 6 is positive communication. So we ask again, if there's a rat trap in the farmyard, so it's in one way it's everybody's business if something is going wrong. So positive communication has to be present if there is supposed to be a healthy family or a healthy church. So healthy families talk in positive terms, and they also know how to work through problems in a positive way. Positive communication. And so through words, hearts and minds are either being destroyed or and broken apart, or they connect more in a better way. So the devil feels very successful if he can poison every line of communication that is between you and your neighbor, your sister, or your brother. And if he can't poison your words, he'll try to break your line of communication between you and your sister or your brother. Proverbs 18 verse 21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. So our speech can actually kill someone or it can heal someone. It's so very powerful. And I'd say especially parents to children, well, not just that, but between two sisters or brothers in the church. We can kill each other by speech, by saying words, negative words, or we can build each other up and strengthen healthy relationships. So if there is a bad situation, a family situation, normally the words are either few in that circle, or they are poisonous, or they're unhealthy. And there's various kinds of destructive types of communication. One is inconsistency. If we as parents are like an angel one day and like the devil on another night to our children, or another day, if we act that way, everyone loses their trust usward. Um, so. So communication just simply breaks down if there is inconsistency. One day we say this thing and we're friendly, and another day we say completely something completely other. So silence is also one of the deadly ways we can, our communication system, if it breaks down, especially if we use silence to teach somebody else a lesson or to punish someone by silence, that is also poison from the devil. And there is another way of like degrading language. If we keep telling people, oh, okay, you're just no good for nothing, or you never do anything useful at church or in the home or anywhere, that is very degrading too, and it destroys communication and relationships. Dishonesty too. If in our conversations with our brothers and sisters in church, and if we modify our stories and actually communicate in a dishonest way, that is also the easiest way to create disharmony and fights among these circles. So, but on the other hand, positive communication traits would include like praising other people, and when we praise other people, for most people it is a fuel to continue with courage. I think Mark Twain used to say that somebody who gave him one sentence or one word of praise to him, that was fuel for him to live a whole month. Again, fuel to live with courage for a whole month. So, and it is also important to do this in public. Like, for example, a husband, if he talks well about his wife, even in public sometimes, or the other way around, or about his children. And also by praising our children, we earn the right to also, what we should probably say, criticize, or at least constructive criticism. We earn the right to constructively criticize our children if we praise. So criticism should normally be sandwiched between praise and encouragement. And another thing is in positive communication is properly directed interest. So very often we meet people who always only talk about themselves. They just talk about their own things, their own jobs, and what they've been doing. Maybe at your Sunday afternoon when you're with your family, your in-laws, maybe there is one member of your whole family that just always just talks about he does and what his job involved, and what he did yesterday and during the week and what he's going to do, right? And sometimes there is a point when you just feel like just take a baseball bat and get this guy out of this circle, because he just only talks about himself. You get tired of these things. So I'd like to say here that at least 90% of your conversations, like in such circles, or in church circles, or in family, or even towards your children, should be directed towards topics that are of interest to the other person. Because if you communicate about things that are of interest to the other party, to the other person, these persons tend to open their hearts to you, and they really connect much, much better. I've just seen it in my experiences as well. That if we actually intentionally search for a way to communicate or talk about something that is of interest to the other person, that builds relationship. Even in business, if I have a customer and if I know he's a doctor, I will strike up a conversation about how's the healthcare system going, or how do you do in your clinic, or how's everything going in your world, right? And he immediately connects, and he wants to come back to our business again, and come and buy more. Or if you see somebody whose interest is, maybe somebody has a hobby, he likes to go hunting or whatever. Even if you hate hunting, but it can be a good thing to actually ask him about, hey, how did your hunting going, or your fishing, or whatever your interest is. So try to intentionally pick topics that will be of interest to the other person. That helps to build relationships, and people will want to be around you. They will want to connect. It's just the way things work. Or if you husband and wife, if you talk to your husband about, or to your wife about things that will be of interest to him or her, I can guarantee you that the connection between you as husband and wife will improve. All right, intentionally, 90% of your conversations should be directed to to things that are of interest to the other party. All right, remember this. And another thing that is in positive communication is timely conflict resolution. So we know that conflict happens daily, and they must be faced and dealt with rather than just ignored. So, we sometimes hope that these problems will just go away over time, but I don't think it always is that way. Normally not. Ephesians 4 verse 26 says, "Do not let the sun go down on your wrath." So we need to work with these things, and we need to intentionally also work through steps how we can solve these things. There might be some thick air between a sister and another sister in church. There might be some conflict or some conflict between two brothers in church, or even in your immediate family. And so in these situations, we need to actually, we tend to always defend our own views, but to solve these issues, you need to, number one, search your own heart. Is there anything I am trying to push, any agenda, personal agenda that I'm trying to push or move forward? Is there any motive in my heart that would actually create more problems between me or that person? You need to start with your own heart. Search your own heart to see what's really going on in my own heart. Secondly, you need to go and listen to that person. Invite the other person to tell his or her side of the story without interrupting or correcting the person during that listening session, okay? We always want to jump in and say, hey, that's not true, or interrupt that person or correct that person meanwhile while we listen. Don't do that. Even if you believe they're lying to you, even if you don't believe their story, but invite the other person to tell his or her side of the story and be completely open and transparent and just listen to them. And it solves a lot of relationship problems if you do that. And then once you've listened to him or her, you don't have to tell your side of the story during the same session. Maybe you can sleep over it, and if there is some issues that you really need to work through, you can go and maybe sleep over it and go tomorrow or next week and just share some of your own concerns as well. But only, again, after you search your own heart and after you gave the other person the opportunity to tell his or her side of the story first before you do yours. And then after that comes confessing your faults, because there is a I don't know, it's an interesting thing, but we see that if there is relationship problems, even if the other person is 99% in the wrong, and you only have 1% of the wrong, but there is a secret. I don't know if it's a secret or some, maybe you want to call it magic. But if you confess to the other person your 1%, immediately the other person opens up and releases the majority of the tension. Okay, they're opening up, and they tend to understand you, and they're actually open to listen to you and fix problems and start loving you, right? Forgiveness immediately comes. So normally we want to say that, okay, you're 90% wrong, I only was 10%. You have to confess first, right? No, that doesn't work that way. Even if you only had 1% wrong, you need to go and confess that tiny little bit. You need to try to find something. Maybe there is an attitude, or maybe there was one word that you said with the wrong tone or something. But if you begin confessing this little 1%, you will see, I don't like to use the word magic here, but it seems to work like magic. Things just fix themselves, kind of. So that is so very important. Then, of course, we go on to the next stage, which is forgiveness, forgiving each other. So, and forgiveness, I believe, it seems to me that the Bible teaches there is 2 steps in forgiveness. The first one is that if I tell you, okay, I forgive you, brother, the first one is a promise. So I make a promise. When I say I forgive you, brother, I make a promise to you that I am not going to take this situation again and charge you again for it in the future, or against anyone else. So we kind of, I forgive you, and this is, I will not bring this up against you anymore. It is a promise, and it can be done in a moment. The second part 2 in forgiveness, is what we would commonly call as a grudge, or a feeling, ill feeling toward another person. And these things normally take time. So to me, forgiveness is 2 stages. Number 1, it's a promise that I'm not going to bring this up against you anymore, because in the Old Testament, the context during which God said to his people that I will remember your sins against you no more. I don't think that God says, well, the Hebrew language, underlying Hebrew language terminology does not actually mean that God will forget. If he says, I will not remember this thing against you anymore. What he says is that I will not charge this thing against you anymore. Okay? The Old Testament, the Hebrew language, used the word remember against you anymore, actually meant I'm not going to charge this against you anymore. So when I say that I forgive you, basically I make a promise that I'm not going to charge this against you anymore. And then the second stage is, of course, the ill feeling or the grudge that we have. And this always takes time. Normally it takes time. So we work with this situation. We invite the person. We go shopping with that person together, and we invite them for a meal, and we bring them a bag of buns or cookies or whatever. So we can do a lot of things to simply heal. This takes time to heal. So there is the 2 stages of forgiveness. One is a promise, which is in a moment, and the second is work on removing the grudge between you and that person, which is largely done by your side, you going out and doing good for the other person. Okay, where were we? Positive types of communication. And we also need to make sure that we use confidential information safely. Positive communication always also is based on that if somebody shares his or her feelings kind of on a heart level, we need to be careful how we use that information. Sometimes we really enjoy hearing some very personal information about somebody, and we go out on the street or to Nefren or wherever we go, and we talk about this thing, and we really enjoy spreading news. But in order to keep trust between persons within a church family and a regular family, we need to ensure that we use the personal information that is being shared on a heart-to-heart level, that we use that in a proper way. We will not spread that out in the street, but we will use it the way God wants us to use it. All right, number 4 out of the 6 we were going to look at today is a proper authority structure. A proper parental, for example, a regular home, we would say a proper parental authority brings a sense of security for the children, and it prevents sin to create chaos in the home. And so proper parental authority, it demonstrates submission to an even higher authority, which is God. So if we practice a proper authority structure, a godly authority structure, which is also including submission to each other. So for example, in Ephesians 6, where Paul says to not provoke your children to wrath, the context in which that was written implies that they should not require of their children what they themselves are unwilling to keep. For example, if we disrespect police officers or members maybe of boards or committees or within the church or elsewhere, if we disrespect those people, we will create a lot of destruction for our children even. And they will tend to not want to respect us as well. So proper parental authority should be demonstrated by parents toward other authorities, like I said, especially in front of children. We need to make sure that children learn to respect authority figures. And it also places husbands and wives in their proper biblical roles. For example, 1 Peter 3, verse 7 says, husbands, likewise dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife. And on the other hand, it says to wives in Ephesians 5:22, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. And verse 33 says, let the wife see that she respects her husband. And of course, we know children also have to do their part. Ephesians 6, verse 1-3 says that children should be obedient. They'll have a blessed and a long life. And so these, like the concept or the idea of the biblical teaching of submission is exactly the opposite of what the world teaches today. In the world, submission is considered a sign of weakness. So if the Bible teaches that a wife should submit to her husband, that is considered a sign of weakness. Or even the Bible tells in another place that everyone should submit to each other. And so wives are being belittled in the world if they respect, honor, and submit as the Bible teaches. And so a proper authority structure also includes loving discipline, as we all know. So clearly communicate your expectations to your children. Be consistent in discipline. We can't practice one way of doing things one day and a completely different way another day. And we, of course, we need to discipline in love. And also with disciplining our children, we need to keep the faith. Because very often the results of proper godly and biblical discipline to our children, it bears fruit sometimes just like 10 years afterwards or 20 years afterwards. So keep the faith. Even if you don't see immediate results, you don't have to panic and overdo it because you don't see immediate results. Because very often the results of proper biblical discipline, the fruit of that will show itself maybe in 10 years. Maybe when they're out of your house already, maybe after they got married or quite a long time after that. So we don't have to panic if there is no immediate obvious results. Just simply rest in God's sovereignty, rest in the there's a safe feeling if we can just simply place this thing in God's hand and let Him work through in this situation. And so number 5 out of these 6 is personal responsibility. I think it's very, very important that each one of you carries or takes personal responsibility for his own actions, his own life, and his own behavior. We tend to make a lot of excuses why my life doesn't go the direction we would have liked to see it go. We always blame other people. We point to other people. He's at fault or she's at fault, or because the reason I'm not where I should be in my spiritual walk is because of that person or because of this person. And we fail to take personal responsibility for our actions. And a lot of people, and if we have this attitude that we actually point to other people, and this person is the reason for me not being where I should be in life, then that person is also responsible to fix me, right? To help me or to solve my problems in my life. If I blame somebody else for my problems in my life, then I also have the right to wait on that person to fix my problems in my life. So we have so many people waiting a whole lifetime. They just wait and wait and wait around and say and claim that okay, my spiritual life, or I'm going to be a proper person or lead a proper life again once that person will fix the problem, or once she fixes her problem, right? Because as long as she doesn't fix her problem, or he doesn't fix the problem, or the problems that he caused in my life, I'm going to wait because they're responsible. And people get old and we grow older, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, and the other person never came. We waited all life long, and we never went anywhere in life. So that is a problem we see a lot. So concerning personal responsibility, the Bible tells us 3 very important things. Number 1, you were created with freedom of choice. You have the choice. You have the freedom to choose, make decisions, or respond in whatever way you want to what happens to you in life. We don't have control of the environment we grew up in, but we have complete control of how we respond to that environment. So number 1 is that you have the freedom to choose. And secondly, obedience to God has absolutely nothing to do with how other people treat you. All right, remember, obedience to God has absolutely nothing to do with how other people treat you. And thirdly, you will be judged according to your own actions, words, and responses to your environment. So we need to take personal responsibility for anything that doesn't go the way God would like to see things happen in our life. So the Bible also tells us that your moral responsibility in this world begins and ends this way. We read in Deuteronomy 30, verse 19, It says here, I call heaven and earth as witnesses today against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing, and therefore choose life that both you and your descendants may live. All right? So you need to make a decision between life and death. You need to make a decision between blessing and cursing. You need to make this decision. Choose life that both you and your descendants may live. And your choices today will affect your children a lot during later years. And so I said it begins with this, and it ends in, like it says in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 10, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. So with freedom of choice also comes responsibility in life. I read a book not too long ago by a man named Viktor Frankl, and he's a survivor of some of the Holocaust or the concentration camps in Germany during World Wars, and or Poland. And so he's been through, we could say, the worst type of suffering and hunger and miserable situations in prison for a number of years, and just the cruelest treatment that people could do to persons in this life almost. And he says that it took him quite a while, but one day he came to a point that people can take everything away from you except one thing. And this one sentence is basically the core of his whole book. He says people can take away everything from you except the power of choice. All right, your own choice. Okay, you can make decisions or your own responsibility. You can make a decision. The last one of all your freedoms, he says, is the freedom to choose. The last one of all freedoms in this world is the freedom to choose. They can force, they can take away your children, they can take away your wife, they can take away your right to go shopping, your right to go to school, the right to a proper life in this world. But there is one freedom nobody can take away, and that's the last one of all the freedom, which is the freedom to choose. And even in his circumstances, he chose to honor God, and his responses would line up with the will of God. Okay, and I think our time is up already by now, but the final one here, number 6, is and this one especially applies to your family life at home. So, and this, we have to work on a positive generational transference. We need to transfer what we have, like, positive generational transference. So Proverbs 13, verse 22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. So this verse goes much deeper than just your farm or your bank account. I believe it talks about godly parents and grandparents. They understand the power of their influence over future generations, and they will use that influence wisely. And it includes righteous values that you transfer, like this is a generational transfer to your children. Righteous values, it involves spiritual blessings that you can hand down to your children and your grandchildren, and it can also include a good name in the community. If you messed up your name, if you damage your own name, your reputation, rightly actually, if you destroy your own name, your children will actually have to pay for that during the coming years. So, and these things don't just happen by accident. So where parents live a negative lifestyle, children will normally pay a price in the end. So when you get older, and most of you, or probably all of you, are not really yet at that point in life where you really get older. Maybe older, yes, but not old yet. But when you get older and begin thinking of what you're leaving for your children, there has to be a value system that you transfer over to your children and your grandchildren, which is based on the principle of love. And there must be a vision for the future, like a generational impact that includes multiple generations. When you make decisions, when you transfer your own values, your values, you have to keep in mind not just your children, but your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. How is this going to affect my whole family, all my descendants, for generations to come? So in conclusion here, healthy families and churches are healthy for a reason. They make right choices. People make right choices. and to think the way the Bible tells them to think. So it is never too late to begin. We can begin today. So, and there is a great reward to it. 3 John 1 verse 4 says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. It was a great reward for the Apostle John. Of course, he's probably talking more, he's going beyond just his immediate family, but his spiritual children. So regardless of our failures in the past, God can forgive, God can heal, and he can give you the power to succeed in life. So by beginning to treat our families, our immediate families, and our church family in a healthy way, we can do that starting today, April 4, 2024. And eventually we will reap great satisfaction. I believe even unbelieving children may lean towards more respect and appreciation for you and possibly turn to God. And there is so many blessings with this. If we actually make sure that we practice these healthy family traits, and they apply, like I said earlier, in church family and also your immediate family at home. Let's stand for prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for being with us this evening. We thank you for the power of the Spirit who can transform our lives, and we thank you also for the opportunity to always restart or start over or do things again, and that you give grace and your goodness for us. And we ask that you would continue working in our lives so that we would be transformed into your likeness more and more as we get older, that our inner man would become more Christ-like as we grow from day to day, and help us to practice relationships and communication between us and our immediate families, between us and church members or churchgoers in a healthy way, and so that we would everything we do and say would help to edify relationships and edify the spiritual family we're part of. Lord, we ask this in your name. Amen. You may be seated.